There is much to discuss on U.S. immigration. Let's bring in our panel. Here with us in the studio is Alan Orr. He's an immigration lawyer in Washington, D.C. From San Diego, California, Enrique Morones is the founder and director of Border Angels, an organization dedicated to preventing migrant deaths along the border. Also with us is Marguerite Telford. She is the director of communications at the Center for Immigration Studies, an independent, nonpartisan immigration research institute. And Bryan Pruitt is a conservative political analyst right here in Washington, D.C. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Alan, let me start with you, and let's look at what the situation is like right now. So we have children being separated from their parents. That's been going on for some time now. Some are in detention, others sent to foster homes. As we just heard, President Trump has signed this executive order stopping the separation of children from their parents. We also hear prosecutions will stop. What is the legal status of the people at the border right now?
So, in the categories, those individuals that were already separated will remain separated. And one of the important bits that we didn't hear earlier was how long does it take to reunite those families? And I heard today that it was 42 days to reunite those families. So almost between the time between Halloween and Christmas is the amount of time these family units are separated to be reunited in their home country. So that's still problematic. And there's no system to address that, because the problem is maybe the mother's in California, but the child's in Denver, and their numbers may not be linked together. So that's the same, that's status quo. Nothing was fixed by the executive order with that. Going forward from the executive order, it really doesn't fix anything yet. We really have to see what happens when the family is detained for more than 20 days after this executive order. Do they release the kid and retain the parent and then blame the court for saying the court is making me sort of take this action? Because if you sort of read the executive order, within the executive order in the last paragraph, it says within the discretion of the law, right? So it doesn't really change a very simple thing. It asks the Attorney General to go to our Judiciary Department and overturn a decision that was 20 years ago about the safety of a child.
What about the stipulation that they can't be held for more than 20 days? That's something called the Flores consent decree. Are you saying 42 days? So will someone be...
No. The 42 days is how long it takes to reunite the families after they're released. 20 days is the amount of time they have to be held. Absolutely.
All right, let me go to Enrique. He is in California. And Enrique, what do you know about the children separated from their parents and when they could be reunited?
Well, it's a horrific situation, and what Donald Trump did as far as signing the executive order is far from what needed to be done. By separating the children, which only the United States does, no other country in the world does this, is inhumane. And these people that were crossing the border, most for the first time, that's not a crime, it's a misdemeanor. They should never have been put in prison, the children should never have been separated. Other administrations never did that before. I've been to these detention facilities, I've worked with these children. I was in Mexico today, talking to some of the people hoping to cross through asylum, where Donald Trump is taking those people and putting them in prison, calling them animals. It's a horrific situation. A society is judged on how we treat our children. And what is taking place right now, the whole world is watching in horror. And these kids are terrified. They left a very difficult situation in their home country in Central America. If they would have stayed, the children would have been killed in front of the parents. So the parents take them through Central America, through Mexico, hoping to make it to the United States. And this is the way the United States welcomes them under the Trump administration. It is the worst of the American spirit. No other country in the Americas has walls. No country in the world separates their children from their parents. So it's shameful. We are outraged. We're paying attention. And we're continuing to support the children by bringing them teddy bears and food and counseling and doing whatever we possibly can to show that that's not what this world is all about. Okay. It's gone in the wrong direction, and we want to change it.
Marguerite, we have heard from some officials that this policy, this separation policy, is a deterrent to illegal immigration. But looking at what's going on the border right now, what do you make of it?
Well, first, I have to say, this was introduced as Trump's policy, but Trump is following the law. He's following the law that was given to him. And now with the executive order, it'll have to go back to the Ninth Circuit. They're the ones who've, one judge who decided how you should interpret the Flores decision. Yeah. So he interpreted this and is following the law as he should. But it is a deterrent. I mean, how did we get here? It used to be that it was predominantly single males that came to the border. And now suddenly we have, a 325% increase in UACs coming to the border, a 435% increase in families. The reason for the increase is because anyone with a child got a free pass. And the word got back that if you have a child with you, that you could get into this country. And that's why there's an increase. So we need to stop it, because that journey across Mexico, where you just do not get through without having a smuggler and paying a smuggler, which, by the way, enriches the transnational criminal organizations who get that money. But it also, these children, before they ever get to the border, have had a horrific journey. We had, what, a 6-year-old boy who was just left in the desert by a smuggler. We don't see those pictures because they're happening in Mexico. But we have now 80% of girls and females that come on that trip are raped. That's what we need to stop. That's much more horrific than coming up here and being detained.
Yeah, let me try to clarify something here, Marguerite. Is there any provision in the law that says that children have to be separated from their parents?
Well, what it is once they're stopped, first of all, if they come to the port of entry, then you're not breaking the law. You apply for asylum. By the way, because of all this, there's been an 800% increase in asylum claims, even though only 5% will get them. So it's a fraudulent. But if you apply to the port of entry, then they will come in and you'll go through the process and you will not be separated. But if you illegally cross the border and are caught, then you can only be held for 72 hours. And after 72 hours, the law was you had to be shifted to Health and Human Services and out of the hands of Border Patrol. And then after that, you could only hold the child for 20 hours, I mean 20 days. So you were forced by that to send them to family or relatives or send them to foster care, which, by the way, I used to work for Prison Fellowship and dealt with prisoners in prison reentry for years. When people break the law, they go to prison, and their children often go, with relatives, or they go to foster care. And I don't see many of these people crying about what happens to our prisoners and their families.
Okay, Bryan, this has clearly become a big political issue here in the United States. If you look at some of the reports, the president is betting that a hard line on immigration is an election winner. Let's listen to part of what the president had to say. He said this at a rally in Minnesota on Wednesday.
Today, I signed an executive order. We're going to keep families together, but the border is going to be just as tough as it's been. Democrats don't care about the impact of uncontrolled migration on your communities, your schools, your hospitals. We need people to help, but we want them to come in through the merit system, not a system where we get MS-13 and everybody else that other countries don't want.
Bryan, looking at what the president had to say there, and the massive amount of negative publicity that this has generated, not just here in the United States, but around the world, is this going to backfire on him at some stage?
It's going to backfire 100% unless the Democrats overplay their hand. What you hear now is the Democrats basically, quietly, but the energy is getting louder, for open borders, for completely open borders. Let everyone in is something I'm seeing on social media a lot over the last 5 days. The let everybody in open border message plays right into the president's hands. It's going to, where this goes politically in terms of the midterms, all depends on what the Democrats want to do. And secondly, if the Republicans come up with 2 or 3 very quick, easy fixes. One, reversing the law that treats Mexican illegal immigrants differently from Central American illegal immigrants. The Flores decision is getting a lot of the attention right now, but the law that allows Mexican illegal immigrants to be instantly returned and Central American immigrants must be detained, that law has to be changed. So if you have a family, you can keep them together and return them to their home country. Okay,
very quickly, help us understand the politics of this. The president is a Republican. The 2 houses in Congress both have Republican majorities. So why is it up to the opposition Democrats to?
I'm saying it's a messaging for the Democrats. On a policy side, the Republicans are messing this up. I mean, today was an absolute disaster. All the tea leaves for tomorrow it could very much be an even worse debacle, but it's completely dependent. One, it's dependent on the House Freedom Caucus and the House leadership actually being able to get together and speak with one another. They're yelling at each other on the floor today, on the floor of the House, and then the Senate Democrats being willing to agree to anything. Because right now the Senate Democrats are not willing to do are not willing to go along with any Republican bill that comes out of the House.
Yet despite that, the study that came out, the survey from Rasmussen that just came out, said that 82% of Republicans really blamed the child separation on the illegal aliens coming into this, which, by the way, you didn't talk about all these people who are coming that actually broke the law and you're here illegally, that 82% of Republicans think it's more the fault of the parents than it is our government. And the unaffiliated parties, it was like 56% or 57%. And overall, I think it was like 52% of Americans really do not blame it on the government. They blame it on the illegals who came here to cross the border and come in illegally.
All right, well, let's talk about the plight of the people who are arriving at the border.
First, let's not call them illegals, right? Yeah. Because they're individuals applying for visas just like everyone else does around the world. We don't call those people illegal people.
But
when they show up at the port of entry to file for asylum, that is a legal way to entry under our current laws. And if we wanted to change that, we're more than welcome to change that. So it's not really about, for lawyers, it's not about open borders. It's about due process and just following the procedures. And so if you read the regulations as they are written, you could apply for asylum whether you enter at a stable port or not. What's happening at the port right now is that when people come in to apply for asylum, they say, oh, we're closed today, or we're too busy, and they turn people around. And that's not the legal procedures that should act. It's a deterrent to sort of entering the United States. So as long as asylum's in our legal system, and it's a legal way for entry, people should not be adjudicated to be called illegal. The difference between the criminal system that we spoke about earlier is that first, most of those people are felons. We're talking about a misdemeanor here. And then when their kids are taken away, it's after an adjudication. In this case, the kids are being taken away after 72 hours, as we discussed earlier.
Okay, well, the people arriving at the border are, in many instances, as we heard from our reporter, fleeing violence, fleeing gang violence. They're seeking asylum or sanctuary here in the United States. Now, the United States Attorney General Jeff Sessions has said that people fleeing domestic or gang violence cannot be considered asylum seekers.
Well, the Attorney General certified a case to himself 2 weeks ago, the matter of AB, and sort of changed asylum law for the United States as it has been for 30 to 40 years. It out of step with international law. So those facts holding are to that specific case. He didn't rewrite immigration law. He doesn't have that power. He did have the power to certify that one case. So what that does is it sends a message to the...
I'll get you in a moment, Enrique. Go ahead.
It sends a message to the people at the port to not allow people during their credible fear to grant them a further stay in the United States for a fair asylum hearing. The other cases, the backlog, the 600,000 cases that are pending, it does not change that area of law for those people who have already filed those cases. That's important to understand.
Okay. Enrique, go ahead.
Sure, I'd like to chime in, being the only person that's actually on the border and that works with these people every day.
I actually was on the
They're
border
human
just
beings.
There's no a few weeks ago and in a
illegal. Excuse me. I think he's
had a... Go ahead, Enrique.
Yeah, you know, the Senate, it's an extreme right-wing group. Let's talk about the reality here. These are people. These are not illegal. There's no such thing as an illegal human being. The numbers that were being quoted are comparing a month to another month. We're at a 40-year low of people crossing the border. Most undocumented people are actually in other countries. 239 million undocumented people in other parts of the world. The U.S. has 11 million. We're at a 40-year low. It's easy to say, well, I'm comparing this month to last year's this month. That'll change the numbers around, but overall, it's at a low. The wall that already exists, that covers a third of the border, has killed 11,000 people. And the people that are fleeing from Central America, the U.S. had a lot to do with why they're fleeing. Their intervention in the civil wars, the demand for the illegal drugs. The U.S. isn't even in the top 20 countries when it comes to welcoming migrants. So this rhetoric and this nonsense coming from Trump, most people can see right through it.
Okay.
And the way that he's treating children is inhumane. The whole world's watching. Okay. And it's going to lead to his downfall and the party's downfall.
Right. Enrique, I want you to listen to how President Trump is framing this. He's framing it in very stark terms. Let's watch.
If you're really, really pathetically weak, the country's going to be overrun with millions of people. And if you're strong, then you don't have any heart. That's a tough dilemma. Perhaps I'd rather be strong, but that's a tough dilemma.
So, Enrique, here we hear the president telling us that either he removes all border controls and the country will be overrun, or he adopts a very tough policy, the kind of which we are seeing right now. Are those the only two options?
No, the only person without a heart here is Donald Trump. Everybody wants secure borders, but let's do it in a humane manner. The Democrats don't want the open borders. I don't know of anybody that wants open borders. We want humane borders. Let's create a way in which the people can enter. It's way, way low. People are coming here mainly to work, to be with their families, escape a violent situation. Why can't we do what other countries around the world are doing, treating migrants in a humane manner? And those other countries aren't the reason why the people are fleeing their home countries. The U.S. has a lot to do with that, and it's shameful what is taking place right now. Like I've said in many interviews and so forth, it's an embarrassment to have Donald Trump where he is. It's unbelievable that so many Republicans and evangelicals are supporting what he's doing. But society is judged on how we treat our children, and what is taking place is shameful.
Okay.
These people are fleeing a violent situation, and this is the way, if these kids were Canadian, if they were Swiss, and he said it, if they were Norwegian, they'd be welcome, but they're not. They're
Bryan,
brown like me. There's a lot of racism here.
At some of the political options that are being considered right now. As we mentioned earlier on, there are two bills. Well, one was actually defeated. The other one's been postponed. The vote's been postponed to Friday in Congress. What does that bill seek to do?
It seeks to basically change a lot of these laws. Unfortunately, the conservatives, the House Freedom Caucus, the hardcore conservatives and the moderates can't get together. Right. There's the answer, the conservative answer from my perspective is for the administration to do several things. One is to have, Secretary Nielsen needs to be on the ground in Texas taking personal control, just like after Hurricane Katrina, we had a leader down there that was at FEMA that was answering the call, that was trying to get things better. Secretary Nielsen needs to solve that problem. Also, we need to get these kids out of for-profit facilities.
Right.
It's not, you cannot have facilities that are incentivized to detain kids. That's why I'm moderately in favor of this newest proposal that came out today to move these folks to military bases, because there's going to be an incentive to reunite them as quickly as humanly possible within the law.
Marguerite, looking at this law that is going through Congress at the moment, where that vote's going to be taking place tomorrow, it has an amnesty provision in it. Should immigrants coming to the United States be granted amnesty?
Well, it depends if you want to send a signal for more to come. Because, every time we've had an amnesty, and we've had several, it attracts more people to the border who think, I'm going to come in and I will wait for the next amnesty so that I can stay in the United States. So it is a very large one. The Goodlatte bill that went down today was the 700,000 DACA recipients, and the one tomorrow will be, it just gets bigger and bigger. It's the DACA, you have the Dreamers. Now you're adding the adult children of guest workers. So we estimate it's like 2.2 million, and add to that chain migration. So it is a very large amnesty. I mean, on the flip side, you do close 3 of the big loopholes that allow people in, which is a good thing. I think you also, it doesn't have the E-Verify component we would have liked to have seen. It doesn't cut off funding to sanctuary cities. Whether it's a fair balance or not depends, who you talk to. But the fact is, it's a very large amnesty. And I will say, what we're forgetting in this whole conversation, focusing on the illegal immigrants, and the term is illegal alien, illegal immigrant. They've broken the law, but this is the ones who aren't crossing at the ports of entry. But what we're forgetting is how this incentivizes them to come, and incentivizes them to take an incredibly dangerous journey. I mean, people die on that journey. Children die on that journey, and we incentivize it. And the other thing is, I also had a family friend that was killed.
Documented cases of people coming here.
And these people coming in, and they're crossing the border, and we don't know.
They're coming here because of violence.
But tell me this,
Yeah.
Why is there such a surge in people coming? When violent crime is down more than 50% in Honduras, it's down in Guatemala. These are economic migrants who are coming for a better life. And there is a definition to get asylum.
Right.
And they do not apply when you're an economic migrant searching for a better life.
Well, I think everybody first of all, amnesty is the wrong term, right? When we're talking about the DACA class of individuals. Right. We're talking about kids that grew up in the country for 10 to 20 years. We're talking about some fair play and equal justice. So amnesty is not the right term. They've been here. We didn't do anything about it. There's an estoppel sort of claim to them of saying, I've been here all this time, and now all of a sudden you want to object me. Taking the border in isolation is not what we should think. Think about immigration as an overreaching policy. Look at TPS. Look at the DACA kids. Look at the legal immigration visa program that is now being hampered down. All of these crises that exist, the travel ban, DACA, and even at the border are Trump administration crises that exist in order for political gain. So therefore, there really is no real stress at the border. Thousands of people enter the United States every day through port of entries in a legal fashion, from planes, trains.
Well, you talk about politics. I just want to, let's play something that Jeff Sessions said about the Trump administration's immigration policies. Let's watch.
President Trump ran for office promising to end illegality and fix the system. So we're working carefully and smartly, I think, to stop the abuses in the system. It's not a bad thing, but a good thing that the president is complying with his promises about what he intended to do. That's good politics.
It's good politics. Is that what's motivating
it's
this?
incredible.
I don't think it's good politics when you see that most of the country bailing out into the streets and sort of yelling and crying about the children. I don't think it's good politics to break up families that have already been here, TPS, people who have children who are United States citizens, to say you're going to deport them. I don't think it's economically sound to say that you're going to deport all the people who are filing for asylum, all the DACA children, as well as all the TPS people. That's just not a sound economic system for the United States when our population is decreasing because of our birth rates.
Go ahead, Enrique. I know you want to say something.
I was going to say, I think it's important that when you have an organization that comes on, you have an attorney that knows what he's talking about, you have different people from different parties. But if you have an organization, be careful about having an organization that's classified as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Since
the terminology
when
that
does the
she's
SPLC
using,
get to classify people? It's always racism whenever
the terminology,
you...
the talking over and so
That's
forth.
ridiculous.
I'm not saying that racism. You're saying it. However, terminology that's been used, 3/5 of a human being, that was used about African Americans. WAPs, that's what Italians were called. Operation Wetback, and those were taken back because they were racist. Calling a person an illegal immigrant or an illegal alien is racist, and it dehumanizes the person. And to use this type of terminology, like Trump likes to use animals, the way he makes fun of different types of people, religions, the way he talks about women, those have consequences. But how can you go any lower than separating a child from their parent? Okay. It is horrific. It is absolutely horrific. It's shameful. We need humane policies. We want secure borders in a humane manner. Okay. So we need to make changes, and it's important that we all participate in the election process in November to make that change. Okay. Too many people were silent in November of 2016, and the whole world's paying the price.
Okay, Bryan, I've got 40 seconds.
Literally two quick predictions. One, I think on the politics, the president and his team are playing the politics of 2016, not 2018. And secondly, we need to remember that the president does not ever blame himself for a problem. So the two people to keep an eye on are Jeff Sessions and Stephen Miller in the White House when all the fallout.
Stephen Miller is an advisor to the president.
And a very hardline immigration proponent.
Okay. And that's where we're going to have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.